All right, guys, this is Steli Efti with Closer. Today, I have a special guest with me, and this took a very long time to make this special call happen. Mark, so glad and so happy to have you on the interview today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So let's first set the stage. The theme of the interview today, the thing we want to talk about is going to be how to sell to the government when you're a startup. Now, even just me saying this is going to blow some people's minds because they've never conceived of the idea of attempting to sell to the government. But you guys didn't just think about it, you actually are successfully doing it day in and day out, and you've built a pretty successful business and a business that's growing really fast by focusing on the government sector. So
Yeah,
I'm super excited to dive into that world and cover some mysteries to the
there's a
startup
lot of them.
community, a lot of them. So
Yeah.
first things first, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of a brief background. How did you get started? How did you ended up at Seamless Docs? Just kind of to catch us up and bring us up to date.
Yeah, well, I started in SaaS sales in New York City about 3.5, 4 years ago. Excelled at it, loved the whole sales process. Big on to My big thing was relationship-based sales, so I loved the enterprise sale. I didn't like as much of a transactional sale. Then I ended up coming over here to Seamless Docs and Seamless Gov about 2.5 years ago. And at that point, we had a product called Seamless Docs where we didn't really have a focus. We had a product, a forms engine, and e-signature solution that could be used across the board. Any vertical could have used it. However, we figured that we needed to focus in and go out and just dominate one industry. And that's when, about a year and a half ago, we picked government. At that point, also a year and a half ago, there were 4 people in the company. And it was just me on the biz dev side. And we decided we're just going to go after it. We're going to have all product development and business development completely focused on government. And, since then, scaled up. Team's now at 32 people as of right now, and that's 15 on the sales team. And today we're just continually focusing on state and local government and getting our product out there to local municipalities across the country.
Awesome. So let's step back a little bit to the time where you decided you guys wanted to go after the
Oh,
government sector. So just to summarize again for everybody, you guys are a e-signature solution, right? So similar to a number of other big competitors that are out there in this space. The space is pretty big. Um,
yeah, yes and no. Yes and no. So
okay.
a little bit different. We've taken a different approach than just an e-signature solution.
What's the
We are more,
difference?
yeah, we're a forms engine. I think the best way to put it is we're Google Docs for PDFs.
Okay.
So what Google Docs did to Microsoft Word by bringing it to the cloud, adding a lot of functionality, making it easy to collaborate with, that's exactly what we did to the PDF. You upload a PDF in seconds, we convert it into a cloud-based document that can now be submitted electronically with electronic signatures, attachments, and then even payments.
Okay. So you guys have a product. You're a small team. What did you say? 4 people?
Well, when we decided to go into government, it was 4 people.
Yeah, four
Yeah.
people. And you guys make that, just lead us into the conversations that made you guys go government. That's
Uh,
what we're going to focus on.
Funny story. Late night, about 7 o'clock at night, where I was handling biz dev, so I was on the grind trying to get people to sign up for $10 a month plans for our B2C product that we had, and we got a government employee calling in saying, "Hey, can I get a demo? I work for the state of Tennessee. I'm in the HR department, and I'm wondering if I can use electronic signatures on my forms." Next thing you know, demo was rocking. They loved it. He's like, "Oh, we have thousands of forms that we can convert into something like this." And about 24 hours later, we sat down with the CEO and we're like, "This is it. This is it. And this is government. They're ready to be disrupted. There's have thousands of forms. I think if you say the word government to anyone you meet on the street, the first top three things they'll think of. One is probably going to be inefficiency, and two is going to be paperwork.
Yeah.
So it was very fitting. And like I said, that there was a number of factors that we took into consideration, barriers to entry and things of that nature, and competition. We thought that government was definitely the best place for us and the product.
All right. So you guys decide, let's go into the government sector and focus on that. Were there any like concerns, any things that people brought up as like, will they buy from us as a startup? Will it
Yeah.
take way too long for them to make a purchase? Will they be super nitpicky on the pricing because they have tight budgets? Will they be needing some crazy like contract and legal work with us? Like, what were the concerns that you guys had before? Because I want to do the contrast before and after. What of these concerns were true and which ones
Oh,
weren't?
well, I mean, to be honest, I don't want to repeat what you just said, but literally every single one of those were a concern that we had.
Okay.
I think the biggest one and that like overlaying concern was it's never been done before. You know, the people that we had no one to learn from essentially, and that's what I've been trying to do, and then realized that I couldn't. It wasn't anyone successfully as a startup selling. So we didn't know if they would buy from a startup. We didn't know how they buy from startups. We could figure out how they bought, but not how they bought from a company like ours, with a model like ours. They also don't really buy, for the most part. I would say, you know, tiny percentage of government spending is on cloud-based solutions. We didn't have much to compare it to. And that was probably our biggest concern. And we just figured that we were just going to go, you know, full speed ahead and just go after it as hard as we could and figure it out in ourselves. And we did.
I love it. All right. So I was even, as you were talking, thinking, do governments are even allowed to pay a monthly subscription to anything? All right. So we'll uncover a lot of these things. So you guys go, whatever, let's rock and roll. We have a strong hunch that this could be a good market. It might be difficult, but once we're in, there's a massive opportunity. Nobody else is going to easily enter and copy us. Let's go and get them. What happens next? What do you do? Like, what was you had kind of the burden to go and close the
Get the
deal, right, to get a
phones.
customer. So what the hell do you do next?
I use Close.io to hit the phones.
Yeah, good choice.
No, yeah. So I figured out that if anyone's going to figure this out, it's going to be me. So I started, just trial and error. I started the phones, I started cold calling, and I built a framework around that, right? So as I was learning things, I kept on building a scalable framework as to what does a successful cold call look like, and then how can that be scaled. Once I figured out how to measure that, so I said, all right, I should, by making X number of calls, I can get X number of demos. Then once I could successfully do that, we went out and hired an SDR. Well, sorry, let me step back. I was calling and setting up those demos. Then I went out and I was actually giving the demos, and I was trying to close the business. Once I had too much for me to handle, I would go out. I hired a team of SDRs, and they were doing the same thing and giving the demos to me only, right? And I was only handling giving those demos, so almost like an AE type of position. Once I was able to successfully close my first one, we validated that position, built a framework around that position, and went out and hired 2 account executives. And the list goes, and the story goes on, right? Just continue to validate certain sales processes, setting KPIs, measuring them, reviewing them, analyzing them, resetting them, optimizing, and now we have 16 of them. So from then it was a lot of learning, a lot about what their pain points were, a lot of discovery, a lot of research, because that was the biggest thing for us. We knew they had paperwork, but we needed to figure out exactly what pain points they had, and the only way we could do that was by hitting the phones and asking them.
All right, so we'll go through each of these stages really quickly and take a deep dive. So the first thing you do is you cold call them, right? Now let me ask you, where did you get where did you generate the list from? How did you do that?
Yeah, definitely. So I would start off and I would just, I started, we're located in Manhattan. I was like, let me stay local. Government, people love when they get called locally. So I called them up, went to their website first. So I went to Princeton, New Jersey. Actually, Jersey City, New Jersey. You go to their website, you're going to find a forms page. On that page, there's going to be 80 PDFs that must be downloaded, printed, faxed, scanned, email, all that. So I basically called into them and I said, hey, I'm looking to talk to the person that manages your website. Caught that person on the phone saying, hey, I'm on your website right now and I see 80 different PDF forms that citizens are burdened with, printing, faxing, scanning, emailing it. 10 days later, once they submit that form to you, Chuck, what do you do with it? Oh, well, then I got it. And then he started literally telling me the problem, right? And that pain bind begins there. I'm like, so you're using a filing cabinet to manage thousands of submissions? Yes, I am. Can they e-sign them? No. Can they submit them online? No. And I said, do you want them to be? Is that an initiative for you? Yeah, that sounds amazing. Well, I work with Seamless, so got the problem just by going on their website, finding a phone number, asking around who manages the forms, found them, found the problem, really, and to this day, that's how it's done.
All right, so that's amazing. So first of all, would you say that government, like one of the positives of selling to the government is that you can fairly easily find contact information and where they are because they have to display all that publicly. And then when you call them, is it in your experience the case that because they don't get a lot of like calls from startups, maybe innovative, interesting technologies, people that are truly trying to make a difference, that they might be a bit more open to having that conversation? That's a more interesting conversation to them than the usual one that they get.
Definitely. To answer your question, for the first part of it, 100% that's the case. You can find all of that information directly on their website. If I called up and said, "Hey, I want to know how much the IT director's salary is," they'll have to give it to me. So they're very open to giving information, and they're also not overwhelmed by cold callers like you were hinting at. That not many people are trying to sell into them. So for the most part, they might not even know it's a cold call. They think you're just simply asking them a question. They have no idea you're a concerned citizen, because that's what they do get. I mean, they truly get that. So for us, it was a very unique position and very advantageous position because they were very open to it. And when you just say the word innovate, you say efficient to them. Those are buzzwords that make them light up because, in their staff meetings, that's what they hear every day from the top down. Like, we have to become more efficient. We have to provide better services to our citizens. And when you are in line with their initiatives and their objectives, then that's a win for both parties. So
awesome. So you start doing cold calls. You see, I can find these people. When you go through the kind of uncovering the problem, it's there, and they realize it, and they're excited about potentially finding a solution through you. Was calling kind of the main channel, and it has stayed that way, or what role did email play? Did you ever have to start doing cold emails?
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we email, we definitely do, but for the most part, we found, we try to make as many data-driven decisions as we can. So in looking at the data, we found that our clients, our prospects, live on the phones. That's where they live. So we said, let's live there with them. Let's call them. 90% of the demos that we set are over calls, and we still are emailing. So there's that's where they like to interact with. They don't really like emailing. A lot of like email techniques don't really work for them. So yeah, just giving them a call, they pick up the phone, and that's kind of how we've started, and that's how we currently still operate.
Awesome. So, all right. So we're calling a bunch of people. We're figuring out that there's a need. You're making some progress, and you start giving demos. Tell me about that. What was it, and what is it like to demo to kind of a government person? And by the way, maybe let's break down who the customer is. Is it like explain that? Is it one person, the person that's managing IT is the buyer, or is it a group of people? Like how break that down for like people like me who have no clue about this?
Yeah. So I guess sales methodology that is consistent across, I guess, any vertical, including government, is the 4 buyer types, right? So we do have a lot of times the user buyer. So that is going to be the person in IT that's going to be using it. And then you have the economic buyer, right? A lot of times getting someone like the city manager, which is the position. City manager, I think, is a synonym for the CEO. So getting him on the call. And then you get the executive buyer, which sometimes is the same person. So city manager, IT, city clerk, city administrator, essentially people that have managerial role plays, so they can really make decisions, are the ones that we like to demo. But at the same time, you need that technical interaction. So you definitely it does help for us to get IT people, managers, IT directors, CIOs, CTOs, if they have them. So it depends on how big the government is, right? Yeah, so that's who we're prospecting. Yeah.
And then when you do the demo, do you always just go one person at a time? Do you get like the one person, doesn't matter if it's the IT or the city manager, you get them to buy in, and then there's another demo with everybody involved? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, well, first off, I hope not many government employees are listening to this, but
I would doubt that. I'd be blown my mind if somebody from government would listen to this.
they're very narrow-minded people, and not sorry, that's not the right word. Narrow, I take that back. Narrow-sighted people. An IT director can only think in the realm of IT. A city manager can only. It's not like a startup where if you're in business development, you wear all these types of hats, right? Even like younger companies, they wear many types of hats. You have you have your ear to the ground of what's going on in this department versus that department. Government, they're very siloed, the departments. They really don't know what's going on. So, and what I'm getting to is that you would think that demoing in groups is a big plus, and it is, but sometimes it can hurt you because you'll get very specific questions that only pertain to one of the six people in the room, and it's really easy to get sidetracked. So, we like to start in IT because they understand the technical aspect of it. When you tell a city clerk this is a fact that I think the exact statistic is that about 70% of government employees are above the age of 50. That's in local government. So it's huge, right? Yeah. So that you were demoing an older demographic. So when you say cloud-based form, they don't really get that as quickly and simply as somebody that is, working in a startup in a young community. So right off the bat, it helps having that IT person on the demo to help relate to that. So once we get that IT person on the demo, we always like starting with what that current process is. I would say every demo, no matter who we're demoing, we start. I'm not going to show you a product. I'm going to find out what the problem is, so I can only show you the part of the solution or our product that will act as the solution. So that's how every single demo starts. How are you currently managing the form process? What are some of the inefficiencies that you see? Do you have any existing initiatives? Breaking that down at the beginning of the demo, and then once we feel that they have the pain buy-in and they realize the problem, that's when we turn on the demo, and that's when we show them the platform.
Awesome. All right. So now you get to that point. You show them the demo. They love it. What the hell? Yeah. What happens next? How do you quote them? Do you send them a pricing? Do they have to go through procurement? What's the nuts and bolts of the sausage making factory in government, and how do they buy?
Yeah, we need a whiteboard, and you need 2 hours, and after that you still won't know. I've been working for 2 years. I barely even know. No, I'm kidding. So it's very, very, very complex, and the reason is because they're buying the way that they buy things in the procurement. There are a lot of checks and balances. There are a lot of procurement thresholds. Certain states and certain cities can buy solutions like ours in many different ways. There are different line items that they can procure them as. And I mean, like most companies, they have full-on procurement departments, right? The problem is that the procurement people are the ones that buy the software, and the IT people are the ones that want to buy the software, but they don't actually buy it. So they don't know how to buy it, right? So a lot of times there's a huge disconnect between prospect, who is the IT manager, who we demo, saying, I love it, I want to buy it, this is going to be valuable. And then there's that disconnect when it gets to the procurement department, saying, hey, I have this vendor, Seamless Docs, we want to buy it, and then we get lost. 3 months will go by, we'll get radio silence, and then all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, here's the PO. And that happens a lot. So I can tell you that we do a pretty good job of finding out what that process is like. At the end of the demo, we're saying, listen, it's $10,000 for an annual subscription. What happens next? Oh, well, they'll fill us in a little bit. It needs to go to procurement, and based on this price point, we need to get 3 competitive bids, right? So by asking them, just flat out asking them, how do you buy something like this at this price point? They'll tell us, and we have to do that every time. We can't assume anything. So it works. We bill everything on an annual subscription, and it depends on the size of the government. It depends on how many documents they want to get up and running. But that's usually what it starts with is figuring out what plan they want to be at, what that purchase price is going to look like. From then there are a number of thresholds. For instance, quick example, for if you want to buy for a small city, 10,000 people, the price is $4,950. Now, for $4,950, that is strategically priced because there's a $5,000 threshold in which any department head could sign off without going to council. So like it's $4,950. Interesting. That's a good price point. I can sign off on it.
Yeah.
So we've done our research in figuring out what those thresholds were. We try to stay away from RFPs. That's a big word when it comes to government procurement. Everyone knows about the RFP world. It takes years, sometimes a year.
What's an RFP? Break it down.
A request for a proposal. So essentially, what happens is that the government will come out and they'll say, we want 20 new computers, right? So they put out a request for a proposal from a reseller of computers saying we want 20 computers, and then they put requirements as to what those computers need to have, right? The problem with RFPs is that, especially for a SaaS-based solution like us that's very innovative and progressive, right, is there's a government employee or whoever's creating this RFP, they don't know about a cloud-based online forms engine and e-signature solution. They don't know something like that exists. So how are they supposed to ask for something they don't know exists? That's one of the problems with RFPs. And it's actually one of the biggest rebuttals we get. Like, oh, it's not in the budget. Well, it's hard to budget for things you don't know exist, right? So for us, that procurement step, once that demo is gone, is over, it's a lot about not only procurement, but increasing internal buy-in. And we do that here with educational content. We have a saying over here, it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when. So we try to keep current with them, provide them with educational content that shows the value in the product, try to work with a lot of their trusted partners. So like instead of saying, hey, here's why you should buy Seamless Stocks, we'll say, don't listen to us. Listen to your neighbor, Aurora, Illinois. They're using it like this. This is how you could potentially be using it. And I can tell you the government, they don't want to be first in anything. That's it. That's a fact. They do not want to be first in anything. So if you can just show them how their partner did it, their neighbor did it, that's something that they love and appreciate.
That's actually something I wanted to ask you. Once you get a government as a government body as a customer, do they give you referrals? Are they references? Are they like, are you even allowed to do that? So that's an interesting point that you can just point to other cities and go, your neighbor city is using it this way. You might want to do it the same way. It's kind of a social proof.
Yeah. So social proof is huge, but it's funny with like referrals, right? That's one thing in the sales world you hear every day. Like if you're big on that, right? If you're not asking for a referral, then you're not doing your job. Well, for us, it's a little bit different because it's like partially illegal. They really can't do that. They're not allowed to say, go reach out to John in this city. So, but references, on the other hand, that is a big portion of it. I would say about 9 out of the 10 deals that we close need to have a reference. The client will ask for a reference. But at the same time, they love giving, they love sharing. Because it's almost like that stamp, like that pride stamp that they have. It's like, we just innovated. We've successfully put online forms on our website, and they love it. Example of that, Reno, Nevada. We have what we call our champion, which is the person that helped sell while we weren't in the building, and they number of forms online. Within the first 3 months, they had a couple thousand submissions of these online forms with the e-signatures, right, or Seamless Stocks. And once the citizen filled out the form, the city of Reno did something really smart. They sent out a survey to all the people that filled out the form saying, and there was 10 questions regarding what was the new experience like, what did you like, what didn't you like, things like that. And I think in the first month they had a couple thousand submissions, and their approval rate was 99%. And we were getting these snapshots of the metrics that came back from the survey. People were like, this is amazing. People were tweeting at the city of Reno saying, like, where has this been? Why is it taking so long? Like, I'm so happy I don't have to drive 30 miles just to submit a simple business license application. And it's crazy, right? We're laughing, but that's the reality of the 19,000 municipalities in the country. It's all being processed via paper. So,
yeah, that's crazy. All right, so I want to get back to something that you said earlier in terms of like a lot of times you're trying to steer away from RFPs, but also sometimes they have to get multiple bids for something depending on the price point.
Yeah.
Is that something you try to steer away from as well, the procurement part of it, or is that just part of the reality? Sometimes they're gonna go and try to get too competitive bids. Like, how do you think about that? Especially because it seems like a part where you're losing control, right? Where you've done everything you could, and all you can do is wait, cross your fingers, and hope things magically work out. But I'm wondering how much you're able to influence that, and if it's certain deal sizes you just have to go through it or not. I'm curious about that.
Yeah. So we're in a very unique scenario, being that in government procurement, there's something called single source and sole source. So single source is essentially there's four very close competitors, but I'm going to procure Close.io over Salesforce because I think that Close.io is the better CRM for me, right? Then there's sole source, which is this is the only company that does exactly what they do, essentially saying that there's no direct competition. And when you have a sole source provider, everything else is essentially null and void. I don't have to go out to get a competitive bid from three other companies because those two other companies don't exist. And that happens. That happens a lot. There are companies governments that come to us saying, for instance, Marin, Arizona, right? A user of ours, and they were like, we need to, even though you're a sole source, we need to go out there and put a bid on the website. So they went on the website, they put a bid out there, and you're right. At that point, we did essentially lose control because kind of, right? We lost control, but at the same time, we had in a back pocket that we were in control because after 7 days of that bid being on the website, guess how many people responded? Exactly, 0, because there's no one else that does it. So, and that's actually one of the funny things with going back to RFPs. One of the most interesting parts about RFPs is that the RFP usually is created there's a saying in government, once the RFP is out, you're already too late. Because that RFP was created based on the requirements of whoever got there first. So, for instance, for me, if I go to this government and I say, "Hey, I want to charge you $100,000 for," I give them a solution. They say I say it's $100,000, and then they say, "Okay, well, we need to go out to get an RFP." So we say, "Okay, here, well, this is what your RFP should look like," and it has all of the requirements of our solution. So what they do is they literally take that, copy and paste it. They create their own RFP. But little do the other vendors know that that RFPs are requirements, and no one else has those, right? So at that point, they're too late. If another company came and saw that RFP, they would be a little bit too late in the game because they wouldn't have those requirements that we had. Yeah.
All right. So after that happens, let's say you win either a bid or you are accepted as sole provider,
sole source,
and you get the deal. What happens typically next? Do they just write a check? Does it take forever? Like, what happens next in the process?
I mean, at this point, it's pretty typical. On our end, we set them up with an account manager who helps with the training and the setup. On their end, and we send them an invoice. On their end, it's pretty straightforward. We'll send an invoice, they send a check. One of the beautiful things about our company is in selling the government is that they have to pay. So we don't really worry about it. We don't have an accounts receivable department.
Nice.
So they'll send over a check. We encourage them to pay online if they can, just to it's kind of like a little just a little taste that they can pay online if they want to for some low level price points. They'll send a check, and from then on, our account management team takes over. We handle all the training for these for the government staff, and I'll tell you what, I think the biggest something to highlight is they love the amount of support and hands-on training that we give them, because the only thing that they can compare it to is what they currently have. And what they currently have, nothing against the big giants out there, but the Oracle, the Accenture, like these huge companies, just they don't have the bandwidth to hold the hands of people, of their end users, right? So for instance, when we first started, our response time for support tickets was like an hour, 2 hours, and they were like, I was waiting about 6 to 7 days normally, and we were like, still to this day, like easy, like I just emailed you, just you don't have to email me back within the hour. From then on, our account manager takes over, and we help get them started. We help them innovate with their forms, give them as many resources they need to actually make the implementation of the platform successful.
All right, we'll make a big jump before we move forward, which is the first government customer.
Hmm.
I'm wondering, right? For that customer, you don't have references.
Oh,
How did that work? How long did it take you to close that first customer, and what did it take for you to close them?
selling the dream. Selling the dream. I don't. I think that the first couple customers don't even know what they bought. They just bought it because, um, and I mean that with a grain of, a grain of salt. But there's a little honesty in that. It took a lot of, you know, giving them a conceptual idea of what they can accomplish. And I think the biggest hump was being the first and innovating and being the first government in that area to provide a service like this. Like I said, governments don't normally like doing that. They like to go with a little more of a stable solution at all times, right? But for us, it was really tough because they all asked for references, and we just had to say, give us our word for it. We had to offer a lot of, had to bring some sales tactics in there, saying offering 30-day money back guarantees, cutting the price. We had to go in the very low price point, so almost there was not that much risk involved for them. A lot of risk mitigation on our end for sure, hand holding. That support aspect of it was something that they really liked, and it was a big reason and value add for them to go through with a young company like ours. So to give you an idea, when we first started, a lot of governments that we tried to sell to, they're not allowed to buy solutions for governments that don't have. Sorry, the governments are not allowed to buy solutions from vendors that have not been in business for 10 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's.
What did you do in those cases? Just not sell them and find the government agencies that were able to buy from a younger company, or how did you deal with that?
I mean, we're both. Yeah, we definitely minimized our investment to the amount of time that I put into trying to convince a government that's been running like that for 200 years and try to tell them, hey, you should start buying from young companies. But we didn't just abandon them, right? We did do everything we can to learn why, to learn how we can get around that. Because one of the things that we have to, that we have to take into consideration is the fact that their procurement team a lot of times want to buy something like this, but this is legislation, right? They can't just walk into some guy's office and say, hey, can you scratch out this 10 years and make it 1 year so we can buy this? I mean, you're talking council meeting after council meeting, whatever that may be, legislature, state legislature, something you don't want to get involved with.
So, all right. So you do whatever it takes basically to get the first few customers. You make the risk as low as you can.
Yeah.
You hustle and you over deliver and you build a relationship and you get the first few, in whatever way possible to believe in your solution, and then you use that success and leverage up to more and more. What's the typical sales cycle for all of this? Like what at the beginning as well as today, and has that changed? What would be a sales cycle that's realistic?
Yeah, so right now for us and where our price point's at, it's 90 days. And it's 90 days regardless. So in looking at the data, it's 90 days regardless of the size of the population. Which for us, we were shocked in realizing that number. So if you're, City of Los Angeles is one of our customers, all the way down to an 800 person city in New York, right? So, and both of those were 90 days. So that's normally what the sales cycle is like, yeah.
Okay, and then let's talk about, once you went through the cycle and you started hiring people to teach them to do these jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, startups are hot, and lots of young people and lots of people want to get, want to get involved in startups, want to work for a startup, but
Mm-hmm.
government isn't necessarily a sexy thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, B2B is necessarily not as sexy as an end consumer product, right? But then the government, B2G or whatever the hell you call that, that's
Yeah,
even
B2G.
less sexy potentially. I don't know. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you hire and recruit, and how do you train these people for this type of job? Like, is there something special to consider? How do you think about that? Were there any challenges or any things that were surprising as you were building up the sales team?
Patience. Patience. Sales is something that a lot of people are just born with, right? It's a natural talent. So you're right. Like we would cut, like in hiring somebody, that training that we did give them. There's only so much sales training that you can give somebody, but for us, that natural salesperson that came into Seamless Stocks and started selling, for us, they even some of them that have been with us for 6-8 months, they still can't grasp the amount of patience that you need to have in dealing with these government buyers. So, but how we're hiring right now is truly based on passion, right? The fact that we want people to join our team that believe in literally making a change in the government space. And when we show the success stories, when we show such an immense, difference in old versus new, and showing them the success stories, like the city of Los Angeles, where thousands of people a month don't have to come into City Hall to fill out a piece of paper. And now they can do that from their tablet. And not only can the citizen do it from their tablet, but the entire back-end processing for those government employees is entirely automated. When we can share that success story with them and say this is the opportunity for you, candidate, to come join that and literally dominate every single government out there and help them become efficient with their forms. I mean, that's something that I think, and I know people jump all over, right? And people want to be behind movement. People love that. So, and also with regard to, the B2G, I think one of the best parts about selling something like our platform is, even to this day, I've probably given 1,000 demos to 1,000 governments, right? Not one of those demos ever was the same, ever. This is not a transactional sale. We're not selling a product that fixes one problem. We're selling a solution, right, or a suite of solutions that fix thousands of different use cases, and that's the funnest part. Being a salesperson here is every single day you come in here, there's going to be some other problem that you got to solve, and that's what salespeople are. They're problem solvers, right? That you got to be a detective and figure what that problem is, and that's what the fun part about working as a sales guy here and selling the government.
That's awesome. Both the connecting the work to a larger why and some purpose, right? Mm-hmm. And truly being the change and helping the government run more efficiently rather than just complaining about it.
Yeah.
And also realizing that the job in itself, if you look at it as a kind of a from a problem-solving perspective, might be a lot more rewarding than in some other markets, because, as you said, no sale is like the other, and no problem that these government agencies have are alike. So, to summarize, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see startups make that are trying to sell to the government sector that we haven't covered yet? Are there any big things that are obvious, or mistakes you guys made? You might not even have seen anybody else try to do this, but you're like, oh boy, I wish I hadn't made that massive mistake.
Yeah.
What are some of kind of the low-hanging fruit mistakes that you now, as a veteran in this space, just know about and can warn us or warn the people out there from?
Don't rush them. Don't rush them. Don't try to throw in late month, end of the month discounts. Oh, if you sign by the end of this month, we will take off $300, or we'll give you a 10% discount. These people don't have a bottom line. They don't care. It's not their money.
Yeah.
The government employees, again, great people, but they don't have incentives. They don't have bonuses. They don't have commissions. They're there for their pension. They're there long term. So you really can't try to sway their decision making with throwing in $100, right? Now, value, on the other hand, is something that you can throw their way, and they definitely like that. But sticking to some of the more mistakes, trying to rush them, is definitely one of the biggest mistakes that we've made. Also, I would say the second one is assuming that every city, or assuming that two cities are the same, even if they're neighboring cities. For us, a lot of the times that we made the assumption that, just because your neighbor did it like this and had, this procurement process, I'm not even going to ask this other, city B because city A was like that. And then you end up shooting yourself in the foot, as the procurement process goes on. So you can't make any assumptions at all when dealing with one city to the next. Some of the other, I think, big mistakes were, I think like in any deal, but for us, not being in control. For us, 90 days is definitely by no means a long sales cycle, but it is a long sales cycle when you consider our contract value. It's on the smaller end. So, that being said, For us at the beginning, we would just lose control of the deal because we just weren't in the know. I would go up to my salespeople, and we use a methodology called medic sales or medic checklists we use. And I would say, okay, great. You gave the demo, but what's the next step? When does the council meet? Or when council meets, what do they vote on? Oh, well, they're voting on Seamless stocks. Well, what are some of the decision criteria that they vote on? And if you don't know that, how are you supposed to supply your champion with the content and the ammunition to handle that, right? So little things like that, just being in the know. So now when I say, hey, sales rep John, where is this deal? Even if he demoed them a month ago, he'll know exactly where is champion. Oh, they're in Bermuda right now. They're on vacation. They'll be back on the 15th. And at that point, the council meeting's on the 17th, right? So as much intel that they can get. In the past, we would just say, oh, they're on it. They told me they're going to reach out to me next week. Now it's not that. It's we need to know every single tidbit of that sales cycle. And I like to call it midwifing the sale. Just literally we're walking them through, holding their hand through the sales process. So that was one of the other biggest mistakes is making assumptions, letting them walk us rather than us walk them.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much. Before I let you go, one last thing I'm curious. Like I know for a fact we have a common friend, a common investor actually, Ron B, who's now raised a fund called the GovTech Fund. If you're interested in that space, you want to hit up our boy Ron Buganim. Ron is awesome. But so I know a little bit from him, just chatting, having lunch with him once in a while about kind of all the cool stuff that's going on in the sector. But what's your impression over the last few years? Are there more and more startups entering that market? Is it becoming hotter? Is it still kind of a kept secret that nobody knows about? Like, what's the trend in the space?
It's a beautiful thing right now. It is being disrupted as we speak. There's an earthquake going on right now with regards to, what they call civic tech. Ron, if anyone can, he's the leader in that space. He's one of the at the forefront of leading that civic innovation. For instance, for us, I think another one of the biggest players when it comes to civic innovation is the GovTech Fund. The Code for America. Code for America, if anyone that's in government, the B2G space, they need to check out Code for America. We were in their accelerator program. They have a summit every year. The summit's actually coming up later this year, and it is huge. It's an unbelievable event in which, hundreds of startups are out there pitching their solutions to the government space. You definitely be surprised. We're not the only ones out there, but we definitely have been one of a few successful ones, I guess.
That's awesome. All right, my man. Hey, Mark, thank you so much for sharing the tips and spending the time with us. If people want to learn more from you and about you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Well, if they want to learn more about SeamlessGov, which is more important than I am, they should head to seamlessgov.com. If they want to learn more about me, the best way is to talk to me. Feel free to email me. It's Mark, M-A-R-C, at seamlessstocks.com. I love answering and talking about B2G sales. I really do. I'm open to talk to anyone out there regarding selling to government and what that's like.
Thank you so much. And my message for the audience, if you are considering doing B2G, you definitely need to talk to Mark. We've known each other for a while, and those guys are crushing it. And Mark has been super awesome with his time supporting a lot of entrepreneurs and other startups. So definitely take him up on his offer if you get a chance.
Awesome. Thanks, Deli.
Thank you so much, Mark. Bye-bye.
All right, see ya.